All right, guys, the final thing we're going to talk about with quadratics is the discriminant. The discriminant is, if you remember what the quadratic formula looks like, it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by 2a. Just this part of the quadratic formula is what we call the discriminant. Okay, and if I plug a, b, and c into those three spots, then there's three different possibilities for the answer of the discriminant. If b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0 or positive, so basically if I solve this and it becomes a positive number, then these bullet points will tell us kind of what happens in each of the three cases. So it's possible that the discriminant comes out to be positive. If there's positive, that means there's two distinct real zeros. Okay. The other possibility is if b squared minus 4ac is less than 0 or negative. If this comes out to be negative up here, this b squared minus 4ac, when I plug in all this stuff and solve it out, if it comes out negative, then there's 0 distinct real zeros or solutions. Zeros and solutions are the same thing. And if b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, then there is one solution to the problem. Okay? Now, on the con practices, they also show you some graphs. If you look at the graphs, if you have a quadratic that looks like this, it's going to ask you, is the discriminant positive, negative, or 0? And so what you have to look at is how many times does the graph cross the x-axis? This crosses the x-axis twice. X-axis twice. Therefore, this has two solutions. And if we come back to here, if it has two solutions, or two real zeros, then the discriminant must have been positive. Must have been positive. So if the graph crosses twice, that means that the discriminant must have been positive. There's no other possibility for it. All right. And then if we look over here at this other one, if we have 0 solutions, well, that would be a graph that looks like this. This graph of this quadratic will never touch the x-axis. So it never touches the x-axis. Therefore, it has 0 solutions. /zeros. Right? It has 0 solutions. And if we come back here to our three different possibilities, 0 solutions equates to a discriminant that was negative. And so if you get a graph that does not touch the x-axis at all, you know that the discriminant must have been negative. And then the last one is, what if we have one solution? Okay, what if we have one solution? Well, that's going to be something like this. If the graph comes up like this, and then hits exactly on the x-axis, and then comes back down. So it only touches once. Only touches one time. If we come back to here, if we have a solution of, or if we have a graph that touches the x-axis once, then that equated to a discriminant that equaled 0. And so if they give you a graph that touches exactly one time, then you know that the discriminant was equal to 0. All right. There are a couple problems on the con practices where they'll give you a graph and they'll ask you, is the discriminant positive, negative, or 0? You just have to look and see how many times it touches, come back to your little list here and say, okay, 2 equals positive, 0 equals negative, and if it equals 0, then it's a one solution. Okay. All right. There are some other problems that look like this. They'll say f of x equals, and this comes straight from the con practice, just so you know, minus 17x plus 3. And it asks you two questions. It says, what is the value of the discriminant? And then the other question is how many distinct real number zeros does F have? And then we have a little box here, and then we have a little box here. We're going to put it over here so we have some room to work. And so you're going to put the value of the discriminant. You're going to solve this b squared minus 4ac. So, for instance, here on this one, a is 4, b is negative 17, and c is 3. So if we type this in, we're going to get negative 17 squared minus 4 times a times c. A was 4, c was 3. And if you solve this out, we're trying to see what is the value, and then is it positive, is it negative, or is it neither? Okay? And so what happens here is if we square this, you get 289. A calculator would be handy here also. If you multiply these three numbers, you get 48. And if you subtract those, you get 241. The value of the discriminant is 241. Okay? Now we ask ourselves, is that positive, is that negative, or is that 0? Well, 241 was positive, so therefore it has two real solutions. And so we come back to here, we type in a 2 here because this number right here is positive. And then we get our answer of 2. All right. That's all I have for this video. I wanted to make it a little bit shorter than my last one, but if you have any questions, let me know, email me. And if you're struggling on the common practices, jump on my office hours and we can kind of work through some of those problems together. But anyways, good luck.